Welcome to the Urban Herald. Now, usually we're bringing you the latest from cities, the cutting edge stuff. But today, our team, we're doing something a bit different, taking you on a journey far away from all that to a place where time, well, it almost feels like it folds back on itself. We're looking at a community holding some pretty astonishing secrets about human history and maybe, just maybe, some insights into being human itself.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is our focus on the Hadza people. They're often called, Tanzania's last true hunter-gatherers. They might just be the closest living link we have to understanding how our ancestors lived, how they communicated, how they thrived for, well, almost all of human history, like 99%. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What can they actually teach us about living, about health, about just adapting?
Right, so our mission today really is to kind of distill the key stuff from the sources we've gathered on the Hadza. We're talking about their language, which is incredible, their daily life, the rhythms of it, and also the big challenges they're facing now from the modern world. We want to give you a shortcut, basically, to understanding why this community is so, so important.
Okay, so to set the scene a bit, the Hadza, they're an indigenous hunter-gatherer group. They live in northern Tanzania, near Lake Eyasi. Their population is really small. Estimates are maybe 1,200, 1,300 people total, which, when you think about it, makes their cultural survival even more amazing. Genetically, they come from Tanzania's original hunter-gatherer population, from before the big Bantu expansions that shaped a lot of Africa. So we're talking about a lineage that goes way, way back, deep roots in that specific region.
Wow, so incredibly ancient.
Exactly. And studies suggest they've been living in the same territory for tens of thousands of years. And their homeland, the Yaita Valley, it's incredibly close, maybe only 50 kilometers from Olduvai Gorge.
Olduvai Gorge, the cradle of mankind.
That's the one. So they're living practically next door to where humanity might have actually begun. They have these traditional areas they move between Dunduhina, Talika, places like that, following the seasons, following the water. It's a pattern that's worked for millennia. They really are, you could say, a living library of ancient human knowledge and how to adapt.
That's profound. Living so close to our origins. Does that connection, do you think, shape their language? Because that's one of the things that just jumps out, right? This language, Hadzane, it sounds, well, totally different, but also somehow familiar, like tapping into some deep memory. You called it a symphony of clicks.
You've definitely hit on something central there, Hadzane. To understand it, you need to know that clicks aren't just sounds for emphasis like we might use them, like a text, tisk. In Hadzane, clicks are actual consonants. They combine with vowels to make words, just like B or K does for us. Now, there are other click languages, mainly in southern Africa. Susa, Zulu, you might have heard of them. But Hadzane, it's different. It's what linguists call an isolate.
An isolate, meaning?
Meaning it has no known connection, no demonstrable relationship to any other language family anywhere in the world. Unlike those other African click languages, which belong to bigger families, Hadzane just stands completely alone. It's unique.
That's incredible. So it's not just clicks, it's a whole unique system. What does that complexity tell us? What's hidden in there culturally?
Well, the complexity is just astounding. Think about it. The average language has maybe 30 distinct sounds, right? Phones, Hadzane. It has around 130.
Okay. 130.
Yeah, including about 65 different consonants and a dozen different types of clicks, made using different parts of the mouth in very precise ways. I mean, that's almost half of all the sounds the human voice can physically make. It shows this incredible flexibility, this potential in human communication that, honestly, most languages barely touch anymore.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the sound. It does have this musical quality. The clicks weave in, sometimes mimicking sounds in nature like birds or even honey dripping. And culturally, it's huge. The clicks themselves, the sounds, they often encode specific knowledge about the environment, particular animals, plants, weather patterns. It's all embedded in the language. It's like a living library of ecological knowledge passed down for, well, who knows how long. And maybe the most amazing part, despite UNESCO calling it vulnerable, kids are still learning Hadzane as their first language. Vigorously.
That's hopeful, isn't it? Given how many indigenous languages are disappearing.
It really is. It's a small miracle of cultural resilience, though. Exposure to Kiswahili, the national language, is definitely increasing. That's a pressure point.
Okay, so let's shift to their daily life then. How does this ancient connection to the land play out day to day? Starting with, say, their diet.
Right, the diet. It's documented as one of the most diverse and nutritionally rich ways of eating on the planet. They eat something like over 100 different wild foods every year.
100?
Yeah. And the absolute star, honey, it makes up maybe 15–20% of their calories. It's their most loved food.
The original sweet tooth, like you said. And that story about the honey guide bird, that's real. This bird leading them to beehives.
Oh, absolutely real. It's an incredible symbiotic relationship. The bird guides the hunters, often using specific calls. And the Hadza, they have special whistles passed down through generations to call the bird and communicate during the hunt. When they get the honey, they leave behind some beeswax and larvae for the bird. It's pure cooperation.
Amazing. And besides honey?
Tubers are really foundational, especially when it's dry. The women have this just encyclopedic knowledge of different kinds of roots, where to find them, when they're ready. And there's baobab fruit, a real powerhouse, tons of fiber, vitamin C used for food and medicine. Meat is culturally important, definitely prized, but it's maybe 20–25% of their diet. And what's really interesting is that research shows the best hunters don't necessarily eat better themselves than others in the camp.
Because they share everything.
Exactly. It highlights how deeply communal they are. The food gets shared widely.
Which leads right into their social structure. You said it's incredibly egalitarian. How does that actually work?
Well, for starters, there are no formal leaders. No chiefs, no councils making decisions for everyone. Decisions get made by consensus. People talk things through until they reach an agreement. It's very horizontal. And gender roles, they exist, but they're really flexible. Men mostly hunt, gather honey, make tools. Women mostly gather tubers, berries, maybe smaller animals. But it's fluid. People step into different roles as needed.
And you mentioned high divorce rates. That sounds counterintuitive for a tight-knit community.
Yeah, it does seem that way at first, but it's actually seen as a reflection of individual autonomy. Both men and women are capable of feeding themselves, of being self-sufficient, so there's less economic pressure to stay in a relationship that isn't working. It's a different kind of freedom. And the kids, they start foraging pretty early, contributing to their own food.
Really? Little kids?
Yeah, which is thought to be one reason why Hadza women can have relatively more children. The kids aren't entirely dependent for as long. They pitch in.
That's such a different model of childhood. And the hunting itself, you said they focus on large game, even though it's risky.
They do. Their main tools are handcrafted bows and arrows, often tipped with poison made from a local shrub, Adenium coetaneum. It takes incredible patience and skill. Sometimes, especially in the dry season, hunters might wait silently by a waterhole all night long. Focusing on big animals, over 40 kilos or so, means a higher chance of failure on any given hunt. But when they succeed...
It feeds everyone.
Exactly. It reinforces those communal bonds. It's as much about sharing and social connection as it is about calories.
It paints a picture of a very resilient, interconnected way of life. But inevitably, the modern world is closing in. What are the biggest threats they're facing?
Yeah, the pressures are immense. The single biggest threat is probably land loss. Over the last 50 years or so, they've lost something like 90% of their ancestral lands.
90%.
Mostly to expanding agriculture farmers, like the Supa people clearing land for crops, and also pastoralists like the Datoga needing more grazing land for their cattle. Climate change makes it worse, pushing everyone to find new resources. And the Hadza culture. It tends to be non-confrontational, so rather than fight, they often retreat, which means their resources get squeezed into smaller and smaller areas.
Has there been any effort to protect their land rights?
There was a significant step in 2011. The Tanzanian government actually granted some Hadza communities formal land titles around 84,000 acres. It was historic, a first for minority tribal land rights in Tanzania. But enforcement is tough. The pressures haven't gone away, and encroachment still happens.
And what about other outside influences like tourism? I imagine that's complicated.
Very complicated. You called it a double-edged sword earlier, and that's exactly right. On the one hand, yes, cultural tourism brings in money. It can give an economic reason to preserve traditions, and some projects link it to conservation, like carbon offset schemes. But the downside, it can turn authentic practices into, well, performances for tourists. And worse, there are serious negative impacts reported. Problems with alcohol dependency have surged in some areas linked to tourist money.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, stories of tourists showing up at dawn for staged hunts, the money earned being spent immediately on alcohol, leading to social disruption, violence, neglect, even deaths from alcohol poisoning. It's really tragic.
A high price for economic interaction.
Yeah.
And are there pressures for them to assimilate, to give up their way of life?
Yes, that's another major challenge. Government boarding schools, for instance. The idea might be to offer education, but it takes Hadza kids away from their community, their language, their culture for long periods. They're immersed in mainstream Tanzanian culture. There's very little support for them to maintain their Hadza identity or language while they're there. So when these kids come back, they often struggle to fit back into traditional life. It creates tension between generations and speeds up the loss of culture, especially the Hadzane language. It forces this awful choice on young people: stick with your heritage or pursue what looks like economic opportunity in the outside world.
It sounds incredibly difficult. So amidst all these challenges, why is it so crucial that we, people living very different lives, pay attention? Why do the Hadza matter so much?
That's the vital question, isn't it? And the answer, I think, touches on our own health, our own future. Take gut health, for example. Research on the Hadza gut microbiome shows this incredible diversity of bacteria, far more diverse than most people in Western societies. And this diversity seems linked to their amazing health, their lack of many diseases of civilization, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune issues, things that plague us. Their diet basically feeds beneficial gut bacteria that we've largely lost.
So their way of life is literally healthier for their bodies.
It seems that way, and studies on their energy use are also fascinating. They're incredibly active, obviously moving constantly, but counterintuitively, they don't necessarily burn that many more calories per day than, say, a sedentary office worker in the West.
Really? How does that work?
Well, it challenges a lot of assumptions about metabolism and obesity. It suggests our bodies might adapt energy expenditure, and maybe our modern health problems are less about just not moving enough and more about this fundamental mismatch between our evolutionary past and our current environment and diet.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit more. So beyond health insights, what about their relationship with the environment? You mentioned their deep ecological knowledge.
Absolutely. I mean, they're living proof of sustainable resource management. Their mobility, their seasonal hunting and gathering, the sharing, it's a system perfected over millennia to avoid depleting resources. Their knowledge of animal movements, plant cycles. It's basically a form of deep environmental science passed down orally. Things like their traditional use of fire, managing wildlife, harvesting seasonally. These practices actually maintain the health of their ecosystem for thousands of years.
Right.
There are huge lessons there for us facing climate change and biodiversity loss.
It sounds like indigenous knowledge holds real keys.
It really does, and maybe the biggest lesson is about human potential itself. The Hadza challenge our easy assumptions about progress or what makes a good society. They show us you can have incredibly strong social bonds, sophisticated conflict resolution, and deep fulfillment without hierarchies, without accumulating wealth. Their egalitarianism, their emphasis on sharing these are powerful alternative models. And their language, Hadzane, this linguistic isolate with all its cliques. It shows the incredible plasticity of human communication, different ways our brains can structure thought and experience. Losing that language means losing access to those ways of thinking.
So technology isn't the only measure of success or sophistication.
Not at all. Their society demonstrates that. Children grow up with amazing independence, elders are respected, communities function with remarkable harmony, all without the structures we often assume are necessary.
So bringing this all together, the Hadza aren't just this fascinating group frozen in time. They're a vital part of the human story right now.
Exactly. To kind of zoom out, those clicks, the whistles for the honey guide, the stories told around the fire, they carry echoes of our shared ancestors. Maybe even whispers of wisdom we'll need in the future. It's about keeping possibilities alive. Human possibilities we might have forgotten or haven't even imagined yet. When a Hadza hunter communicates with a bird, or a child learns dozens of plants by name and use, that's a direct connection to our deepest heritage.
As we're facing our own huge global challenges, climate change, inequality the Hadza way, focused on sharing, sustainability, community, it really offers a potent counter-narrative, doesn't it? Their sheer resilience, their ability to maintain cultural continuity for so long, maybe it suggests that true strength doesn't come just from technology. Maybe it comes from that deep knowledge of place, from strong social ties, from being flexible and adaptive. It's a powerful reminder, I think, that there are many, many ways to thrive. And maybe, just maybe, some of the oldest ways hold some important keys for our collective future. Something for all of us to really think about.